Thanks, Coach, for joining us. I'll do a little, if you will indulge me, do a little brief introduction of you, and then if I mess anything up, you can correct me.
No,
Um, so Coach Handy, is, as you guys know, is an assistant coach with the LA Lakers. He has been a coach in the NBA since 2011 and has trained and coached some of the greatest NBA players ever to play the game, including Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, and Kyrie Irving, among many others. Coach is recognized as one of the best coaches and trainers in the NBA. He also played professionally in the NBA for the Golden State Warriors and Portland Trail Blazers and abroad in Europe. He brings his winning credentials to Goodwin today, having been to six NBA finals in a row from 2015 to 2020 as an assistant with the Cleveland Cavaliers, Toronto Raptors, and the Lakers. And he would go on to win three NBA championship titles so far. Coach is also the founder of 94 Feet of Game, an app dedicated to providing the best training program to meet the instructional needs of all players, coaches, and trainers. So, needless to say, Coach Tandy is an expert on the importance of teamwork on many levels, from being on the court to coaching courtside and running a business. To quote the coach, I hope I got this right from our prep call, Coach, you can correct me. Being your own GOAT is essential to winning at the highest level, no matter what game in life you're playing. So, with that, Coach, we're honored to have you. I'll hand it over to you.
well, first off, thank you so much, man. I'm beyond honored and humbled to be here with all of you to just have, I guess, what I call candid conversations about teamwork and leadership and learning and just in general, right? Just trying to be the best versions of ourselves every day. So again, I want to thank you guys at Goodwin and Proctor. And just as I've had an opportunity to learn and read up about your business, there's so many parallels in the coaching world and basketball and lessons that I've learned and how to work with elite players, how to work with elite coaches, how to work within elite organizations, and how do you build championship caliber habits to where you can be at the highest level that you can be at in your business. And I think that basketball for me, first off, has always been a great vehicle for me in life to teach me so many different things, and it's opened up so many doors for me to become a better entrepreneur in business, to become a better father, become a better friend, and just in general, I think just to be a better person. And the whole be your own GOAT concept for me is I think everybody in this call, I really and truly believe that I don't care what walk of life that you come from. That mantra for me kind of applies to everybody. And I've been around some of the best athletes to ever play basketball. And one thing I've learned from those athletes is their mindset has always been to push themselves way beyond where their mind and body sometimes thinks it can go. And being around Kobe, being around LeBron, being around guys like Kawhi, and so many other great players, I think the common denominator for them that to me translates into life is that they wake up every day and they're really consistent in their habits. They're very consistent in how they approach their job, from taking care of their body, how they eat, how they sleep, and then just on the court work and off the court work. Those guys are so consistent and at a high level. And obviously Bron right now is going into year 20. And I can honestly tell you guys, he's running around like he's 25 years old, even at this point. So to be next to athletes like that, I've had an opportunity to learn a lot of great things that have carried me over into the world of business and just being able to help others learn from my own experiences. So today, I wanted to take the opportunity to share with you all some things that I've learned to live by as a coach. I want to share my screen here just a little bit and go through a little bit of the process that I've been taking as a coach to be able to, again, work with some of the best athletes ever. I'll go through this presentation again. I don't want to talk at you guys, but I want to just give you a little bit of history. And again, what has made me successful as a coach and how I really think these things parallel. They run parallel to business. And you guys obviously are trying to build your team, Proctor, and you guys have, I've learned how much you guys are trying to be disruptors in the industry and, one department, one dream. So that lines up with the whole concept of how do you build teams and how do you work with each other within the confines of teams, from coaches on down to players, on down to trainers. We all have to be one and moving in the same direction, even though there's many different pieces to our organization. The coaching staff, obviously there's ownership, there's the front office, which is our general manager, Rob Palinka, and his team. And then it comes to the coaching staff, and then it comes to the medical staff, and then it comes to our strength and conditioning staff. So within that, our team, you can see that there's many different staffs that comprise for us to move our players, which is the main thing. How do we get our players to be healthy? How do we get our players to perform at the highest level? And how do we get them to do that together? And that means that all starts with us in our individual departments of how we come together and do our jobs to formulate, the Los Angeles Lakers team and product that we put on the floor. So we'll go through this, and I'll kind of give you some things from a coaching standpoint and how I really look at these things in parallels in other parts of life. So we can go to the next slide. I want to give you guys, again, just some backdrop on my why as a coach. And basketball has just been a big part of my life, and it's made me, again, given me the opportunity to travel the world and see different parts of the world, basically for free, if I can put it in that sense. And it's always been my ultimate, the ultimate gift I think God has blessed me with is just my knowledge of the game of basketball. I knew at an early age what I wanted to do, and I understood that that was my calling. And I really just tried to dive into it with both feet to help people through the game of basketball. And I feel it, I feel like I've become a really good leader through basketball to help people about life lessons through this game. We can go to the next slide. I've created a philosophy for myself as a coach, a little bit of a play on words here, but I think for me, every day, I've kind of been a coach in the sense of every day I want to get up and I want to grind. I want to help one of our players, if not two or three of our players, get better every day. And so the relationships that I've built with players, these elite players, it's never been from a friendship standpoint. It's always been from building on the floor. And the first thing that I've always tried to do with our players is have what I call a sweat equity and get on the floor and build with them and show them as a coach that there is no job too small. Whatever they want to do, however I can help them improve, I'm willing to do it. And I've always had that mindset of just giving. I want to give the athletes every day. It's about giving so much of ourselves as coaches to help them become better individuals on and off the court. And I have that whatever it take mindset. And I just believe that any realm of business where you're working with your peers and you're working alongside other people in your business, we have to have that mindset of there is no job too small, no matter what it takes, because that's what's going to move the needle. And I've been around some staffs where some coaches didn't want to do certain things. And believe me, that plays a huge impact on how far we go. Because one thing I've learned, if we as coaches are not willing to do what we're trying to get our players to do in terms of being selfless and being willing to do whatever it takes to win, the players see that. So our coaching staff has to be in line with that and have that philosophy of, hey, whatever it takes, all of us, we get out of our comfort zone and whatever it takes, we're willing to do those things to help our team be successful. And I always believe that as coaches and as leaders, as managers, we set the standard for what goes on in our workplace. And the athletes, they feed off the energy that we give them every day. So when it's time to work, there are no shortcuts. And I've always kind of lived by that philosophy. We can go to the next slide. You guys will hear me talk about relationships. And I think in the workplace, in sport, relationships are really crucial, right? Relationships are in communication. So I've kind of shared with you how I've built relationships with guys like LeBron, the Kobe's of the world, the Kawhi's of the world. My first instinct with them has always been, how can I help you as an elite athlete? What are some areas that you want to get better at? And my thought process with that has just always been I want to understand who I'm working with. I want to understand what makes them tick, because then if there's areas where they have down times or they have moments where I need to hold them accountable, I can go back and reference, hey, look, this is what you told me. This is where you want to improve. This is where you want to excel. So we have to push through. And so my relationships with them have always been built on the floor. And I just believe the trust between coach and player, and especially these high level athletes, they have so many different people that come at them, letting them know, look, there's nothing I want from you except for you to be the best basketball player that you can be. And that relationship of moving into friendship, moving into other parts of life, to me, they come after we build that sweat equity on the floor, and they really understand what I'm about as a coach. We can go to the next slide. So key elements for me of business, coaching, training, I really believe that being a respecter of people is at the top of the list. And what does that mean to me? Because as a coach, LeBron, I'll use him as an example. He's a polarizing individual. And it's easy for me to treat LeBron different than I might treat the guy that's 15th on our roster, or treat LeBron a certain way and I treat the janitor a different way. I've been very, very adamant about treating everyone I come across, any individual I work with, any individual I come in contact with. I want to treat everybody the same, because that's really important to me, of being able to give people eye contact, being able to give them the attention that they need. And again, treat them as if they're really important, because we all are. Everybody has a role to play. So that piece to me of showing respect to all of your coworkers, no matter who you are, the owner, the boss, the manager, whoever that may be, the CEO, the COO, doesn't matter. When we come in contact with each other, we all have to have that mutual respect for one another. You can go to the next slide. You have to love. We have to love what we do. I think that's very paramount in being successful. And I know that's not reality for everybody in life, but I always feel like if you're in a profession and you're deciding to do that, then I believe in diving into it. You have to have some passion and you have to bring energy every day. And again, I know there's days where we all get flat, but I purely love the game of basketball. It's been something that's been a part of my life since I was 5 years old. And I think it shows every time I step on the floor. I'm trying to bring as much energy and as much passion to the players and to the game that I can on a daily basis. And I believe that transfers over into business. Having some love, having some passion and energy for what you do, then it doesn't feel like work. It feels like you're building something. It feels like you're part of something. So that's really important to me as well. We can go to the next slide. So we talk about building. Culture is really important. What kind of culture do you want at Proctor? What kind of culture do you want within your teams? And what kind of culture do you want for your one team? That's really important. People say, well, how do you build a culture? Well, I think you have to figure out what you want your culture to look like. And it's one of the things that people go away from. Building a culture is really important, because that allows everybody that comes through the door to understand, hey, here in LA with the Lakers, this is how we do things, right? Because in our business, we get players, we get coaches that transfer from teams, and new players on a new team every year. And they come in and have to understand, okay, what's the culture here? What do the Lakers do? And I think that laying that foundation for what your culture is and what your business is about will help everybody understand what direction you're moving in. So building a culture, and starting with the vision of, okay, what do we want our culture to be, and how do we move into that area? We can go to the next slide. Your team takes on your personality. I truly believe this. And I think as a coach, I'm not a head coach, but I still have a responsibility in terms of how I carry myself. Darvin Ham, our head coach, has a responsibility how he carries himself. The owners, the co-founders, the leaders of Proctor, you have a responsibility of how you carry yourself, because believe me, everybody underneath that umbrella is going to take on that persona of what that business is. So I just believe that the spirit that we bring as coaches every day, that bleeds down to our players. And again, I'm a tough-minded coach. I'm a very old school coach. I'm a no-nonsense coach when it comes to coaching. And I believe in putting in the work, and I believe in the sweat equity. So I try to carry that personality with our players so they can mirror that when they're on the floor. And again, I believe that translates into business as well, in team leaders and in how you're operating in the ownership, in the higher echelon of management. That trickles down to everybody that's part of your team. and the personalities and that you carry on within your business. Go to the next slide. Hold players accountable. And again, how does this apply to business? I think same thing, right? Everybody has a role, everybody has responsibilities, and everybody's really good at different things. There's all these different facets of teams. Players have different skills in the workplace. People that come into the business, we have different skills. And how do we understand what our roles are? Well, sometimes that is about discussion of, hey, well, this is what your job is, A, B, and C, right? And so once you know what the job description is from a management and a leader standpoint, then it's easier to hold players accountable. And so guys like LeBron, again, I'll use the example, because of his stature, a lot of people think he's an uncoachable individual, or they think he's the general manager, he's the owner, he's the head coach. But he's one of those guys that wants to be coached. And when we're put in a situation like that, it's our job as coaches to hold them accountable to what our rules are. All right, LeBron, this is your job. We need you to stay in this wheelhouse. Okay. Austin Reeves, this is your job. And any other player. And once they understand what their job is, and we lay down the foundation of what that looks like every day, then we have to hold them accountable to it. And that's how we keep our guys, again, moving in the same direction from 1 to 15. We can go to the next slide. Coach the details. I'm really big on not skipping details. And again, I believe in you guys' line of work, contracts and negotiations and just being creative in the space of how you're building out different pieces of your clients. There's a lot of details that goes into your work, and it's easy, right? It's easy to skip some of the tedious details of contract work and litigation and all the different things that you guys do. It's really easy to want to skip, but as we know, Kobe was a very, very detailed individual. And I use the word maniacal because he was a guy, if I can give you an understanding, he would get on the basketball court and stay in one spot for 45 minutes and do the same drill. And that's insanely hard to do from a mental standpoint, just being locked in and concentrated. But his thought process behind that was, man, I want to have every detail within this movement in this spot on the floor. So it doesn't matter if I'm here with my eyes closed. It doesn't matter if there's 3 defenders on me. I know exactly what this feels like down to the fine detail. So when I get to this spot on the floor, I'm totally comfortable and I can take this shot in any kind of variation. So as coaches, it's important for us not to skip details in how we put together our game plans. How do we put together our practice plans? How do we put together our individual workouts and all of these things? We have to be very detail oriented in our team, in our players individually, and with ourselves and how we prep. And I believe that carries over into what you guys do as well, and being very detailed with your contract, because, look, the smallest things can mess up a contract for you guys that may have been skipped. So I really believe details are a big part of being successful at a high level. We can go to the next slide. Be a truth teller. And I believe this is in the realm of professional sports. We sometimes as coaches, because we want to avoid conflict, it's easier sometimes to maybe tell a player what he wants to hear, but in the long run, it doesn't pay off, because players are smart individuals. And again, I'm using this parallel for us in business. I think it's always good to be truth tellers about what we're doing, how we work, how we want to work. And even I want to use the word confrontation in business, right? In the office, there's going to be times where there's different opinions and different thoughts. And in that's okay. But the main thing that we always have to remember is, in business, in sport, in leading and putting together things, it's always important to be truthful about what we're doing. And it's easy. Again, I think it's really easy for a coach to tell a player what he wants to hear instead of telling him the truth. And that may be, I'll use Russ, for example. He's in this picture. That may be Russ. Hey, you're not playing hard enough. Or Russ, I need you to make sure that you execute this part of our defensive scheme. Or I need to make sure you execute this part of our offensive scheme. Instead of saying, oh, you know what, Russ, don't worry about it. It'll get better. No. And the only way it's going to get better, Russ, is by me telling you the truth of what you need to do to help it get better. So this is how I kind of use that example. of sometimes the uncomfortable truth is the best truth. And I've learned that when we tell players the truth, they respect us in the end. They may not like what we're telling them, but they respect us down the line with that process. So that transfers over into the workplace as well. People in position of management and dealing with teams, it's really important how we lead our teams. And I think being a truth teller is really crucial to that. You can go to the next slide. And again, if there's any questions, I'm gonna keep encouraging. If you guys have questions about any of these things, please don't hesitate to pop in. There's a thing of basketball is a very emotional game. Um, Coaching in the heat of the moment can be very emotional because as coaches, we're competitors. As players, they're competitors. And in the heat of the game, sometimes things go awry. In the heat of negotiations with contracts, sometimes things go awry, right? You may be dealing with an adversarial client or someone that you're dealing with, and the quickest thing to do is be angry. And sometimes we don't even know that we make things personal. And I've learned as a coach, I have to take the emotion out because I'm a very emotional coach. If you guys have ever watched me coach, sometimes, you can see my reactions on the bench. And that's one of the things I'm really working on this year to not make individual plays personal. Players are going to make mistakes. So my job is to coach. And again, coach from a standpoint of seeing the good, see the bad, see the indifferent, and keep it about the game and remove the emotion of making things personal. So even in business, I think when we make things personal, then we lose track of what we're doing in a professional sense. And it's the same in coaching. So I think we have to always keep the main thing, and that is what's in front of us and what do we see and how do we have a solution to it. You can go to the next slide. Great players want to be coached, and it's our job to do that daily as a coach. And I think even in the workplace, right, you have some elite people that are really good at what they do, and sometimes it's easy to let people go rogue and just kind of have their own space. And I'm not talking about micromanaging, but I'm talking about even a guy like LeBron. I talked about how much he craves the coaching. He craves discipline. He craves accountability. He craves what's the plan and how do we follow that plan. So he wants to be coached. He wants to have things organized. And I think that's the most underrated and misunderstood thing about athletes like him is that people say, well, he's LeBron. How do you coach him? No, he expects it. He wants it. And when they have the problems is when we don't coach them and when we don't have a plan for them and be organized. So it's really important to understand, again, just being in a place of leadership, that the people that are below us and they use that term, that people that work with us and beside us, we have to be able to coach and take coaching, at the same time as we're working. We can go to the next slide.
Coach, really quick question on that. How do you approach maybe some athletes or players who don't take coaching well or who don't feel like they need coaching? What's your approach there?
I coach them. I coach them, and that sounds crazy, right? And it's that simple. I think that the difficult thing is some players are so insecure that they'll come in with the element of they're very loud. They have a big bark because the insecurity is there, and they're using that loudness to keep you as a coach at bay. And I've always been the coach. If I don't care about that, if I see something, I'm going to coach you on it. And it doesn't matter the player's reaction. I think sometimes coaches get caught up in, well, I don't want to say nothing to that player because I'm afraid of his reaction. I remove that. I don't care about your reaction. It's my job to coach you. So I'm going to coach you. And if you react a certain way, that's on you, but I'm still going to coach you. And that's how I kind of manage that. And just, again, I have a cue card that I put on my desk, and it's a reminder to me every day because there have been difficult players, right? And they're draining to your energy. But I go back to this card that's on my desk, and it says, no matter what, you have to coach every day, no matter what. And I really follow that creed, and it helps me to say, okay, it's not about the player, it's not about the reaction, it's not about if they're difficult to coach. I have to do it. Because if I don't, then I'm not doing my job, and I'm really doing that player a disservice. It's a great question. Do the work, study the game. So for me as a coach, I've been coaching in the NBA for 12 years. I've been around basketball since I was 5, but I've really been in the coaching sector for about 20 plus years now, almost 25 years. And I am still to this day a student of the game of basketball. Doesn't matter what happens. Every day I step on the floor, I'm learning something new, whether it be from another coach, whether it be from a player, whether it be from someone in our strength and conditioning department of teaching how do we help our players move better. I am constantly studying the game of basketball, and I'm constantly trying to figure out ways that I can continue to learn and grow. And I think that's really important in you guys' business as well. You know, again, contracts change all the time. The nature of your business change all the time. The world of entrepreneurship changes all the time. You know, technology is changing all the time. So we have to stay students. We have to study. And in that, we have to be willing to learn. Even if we're experts at the highest level, there's always something for us to learn to continue to be great at our craft. So that's really important for us, you know, as coaches, as leaders, as mentors. It's really important for us to continue to be students and encourage the athletes to be students as well, to always continue to want to learn. We can go to the next slide. Be prepared, be organized, and have a plan. You know, this is the biggest thing about professional teams that are really successful. These 3 things are key. You know, there's nothing worse than not having a game plan for our players. And like tonight, we have a preseason game. You know, we play Phoenix Suns. So our preparation to that game is, you know, this morning we got up, we watched film, we go to the arena, we have a quick workout, and we kind of touch on some things that Phoenix does well, touch on some things they don't do well, and we have a plan of how to attack them. You know, we prepare and we organize different things for our players by video, by, you know, paper reports of how do we beat this team and what are the things that we have to do. So being prepared is really important, right? And we tell players sometime, I'll use an example of, you know, not everybody can play. We have 15 players on a roster, but there are some players that don't play. So what is their job? Their job is to be prepared. You are a professional athlete at this point. So you may be upset with your role. You may be angry that you're not playing, but every day you have to come in and prepare, because it's better to be prepared than not be prepared, because it could go 10 game stretch and you may not play. And the most common thing for a player to do is feel like, okay, coach is not going to play me. I'm going to relax. I don't need to do anything. And they're not prepared in the sense on game 11, coach calls their name and they go into the game and they shit the bed, excuse my expression. That is the worst thing that can happen to an athlete because they weren't prepared. So I try to tell our guys all the time, your job is to be a pro. You have to be prepared for the unknown. So what is your job? Every day, whatever that job is, whether it's being used or not, whatever your job is and your role is, you have to do it. Be prepared for when the time comes that the opportunity for you to use those skills. Being organized is really important. And then again, the last part of just having a plan, all of those things go hand in hand for your team to move in the right direction. We can go to the next slide. Quality over quantity. And I want to break this down and help you guys understand what this means for me. I've started my career as a coach as what you call an individual skills trainer. I was always very big in just helping individual players become elite at what they do. And a lot of times athletes would go into the gym and spend 2 hours. They'll spend 2 hours in the gym and it would be a useless 2 hours. The quality of their work is not great. And it's just 2 hours of just wasted motion. Well, I'm the type of coach, well, let's get in the gym for 45 minutes. And the quality of the work that we're going to do in 45 minutes, somebody spending 2 hours, I'm going to give you this quality of work in 45 minutes. So the quality of what we're doing on a daily basis, let's not waste energy. Let's not waste time, right? So let's take the quality over quantity. You know, we call it fake hustle. Sometimes you get guys and athletes that, you know, they want to pretend like they're moving around, but it's just fluff. Well, again, I would rather spend 45 minutes of having a great hard workout than 2 hours of doing a wasting time. And again, this can apply to meetings. We're in our meetings. How can we be efficient with our meetings? Well, let's have some quality time, and let's not let the meet about the meeting. You guys understand what that means? Well, let's have a meeting about the meeting. Now let's be sharp with our time. And so the quality over quantity thing is really big with me, and how the athletes take care of themselves and manage their workload on a daily basis. Go to the next slide. Be willing to share your knowledge. Now, this is a really big thing, because the corporate world is just as competitive as the basketball world. Corporate America is a tough industry to be in, and everybody's trying to get the upper hand. They want to get an upper leg, and sometimes I'm very secure in myself as a coach. I've always been very secure in my knowledge and the foundations and the training techniques that I've applied. So for me, how can I make the basketball world a better place? Well, I have a wealth of knowledge. I want to share it with as many people as I can to help the game of basketball be in a better place. So your law firm, you guys are really on the cutting edge and doing different things. Yes, you have to be one up on your competitor, but I always believe that there's so much knowledge that we can share with people to help the environment be better. Because at the end of the day, I've always said, look, we have all this knowledge, and we can't take it with us. At some point, everybody's lifeline is going to come to an end, and we're all going to go back to where we came from, and we can't take the knowledge with us. So I'm not a selfish person in the sense of I want to be able to share the knowledge that I have to where it spreads and the basketball community becomes better as a whole. And so I'm really big on trying to share and impact and mentor as many people as I can. And again, I just believe these things all parallel in business in so many different levels. Go ahead. The next slide, please. Listen and learn from our players. So people always say, well, coach always teaches. Listen, I learned so much from Kobe Bryant. I probably learned more from him than I gave him. And to be honest, I've learned a great deal from LeBron. I've learned a great deal from guys like Steve Nash, even players like Ron Artest. There's so much knowledge that these players have that as coaches, in order to be a successful coach, I have to be a player's coach, quote unquote. And that means understanding the lay of the land with our players. They're the ones that are on the floor. Yes, we are the coaches. We have to execute the plan, but they're on the court. So there's different things that happen on the court in the course of a game that we as coaches, we can't see it, we can't hear it, and we can't feel it. So it's our job to be willing to listen and learn from them as to what they see and what they feel. And then how can we help them, as they're giving us this information, how can we help them to navigate those things? So it's really important to understand that, athletes are really sharp. They're smart individuals. And again, in the workplace, how can we learn from each other? How can we listen to each other and really understand what our coworkers are trying to get across or what they're struggling with? It's one thing to, again, be at the top, but it's also another thing to be able to learn from the people that work beside you and work beneath you. I think it's really important. Next slide, please. Be a star in your role. And I think this is universal to any business, any walk of life. Every team has different elements to a team. And as you build your team, every player knows their role. And if you don't know your role, I always tell the guys, well, go ask the head coach, because then you can relieve any of the confusion. So even in the workplace, if you're unsure about your role, ask. I always believe that's really, and as leaders, we have to know what the roles are of the people that are working with us. We have to be able to define those roles for the people that are working with us so they can execute them. If we don't define the roles, then it's hard to execute. Then it's hard to hold people accountable. So I really believe that once you understand what your role is, how can you be a star in your role? Kill it. And that means that you put the blinders on and you focus on the tasks that are in front of you. You're not looking left. You're not looking right. You're not looking at the next person's responsibilities. Just tackle the things that are in front of you. And as everybody's a star in their role, you guarantee you're going to see the progress of your operation moving, your team moving in the same direction. We can go to the next slide. Humility. And I use this phrase that I am a servant. I've always looked at myself as a servant to the game of basketball because I'm serving the greater good of the athletes I work with. As a coach, I give large parts of myself every day to the athletes to help them become the best that they can be. And we have to do that with humility. So, I think there's a lot of room for ego. There's a lot of room for, to be in the space of what I want, me, but we have to remove the ego and work from a place of humility. And humility means learning. Humility means listening. Humility means sharing. It means teaching. So all of those things are all wrapped up together. How can you immerse yourself into your group? How can you give yourself to the group and be selfless? And as a coach, that's been one thing that's always kind of been really important for me, is to be very humble with the athletes, with my peers, and again, with other people that want to learn from me.
Special master activities, all you have to do is look at what happened the other day. So as you know, Judge Derry, the special master, had asked the Trump team to declare.
And then our last clip here is build real relationships with your players. I kind of talked on that, and I want to use this phrase, the human element. In basketball, there's a little bit of there's always kind of like a divide, and it's the, I want to use this word, it's unseen, but the relationship between coach and player, quote unquote, sometimes has been looked at as, well, a coach should not be friends with a player. Coaches shouldn't go out to have drinks with players. Coaches shouldn't go out to dinner with players. Coaches shouldn't go out and, have a good evening. And I totally am against that, in the sense of, yes, there's boundaries that coaches and players may not cross. I can't go out and party with the players, but I believe that, hey man, let's go break bread. Let's go to dinner. Let's go have a drink together. I want to learn more about you, that aside from the game of basketball, once we get through that barrier. And the human element, coaches are humans, players are humans in the workplace, the owners, humans, CEO, human, COO, everybody's in this same element of, hey man, we have to build authentic and real relationships with the people that we work with, or again, we won't move in the same direction. And all it takes is one link to be off. And even with that, it's not going to always be perfect. There's always going to be obstacles and moving pieces. But I believe when the relationships are intact, you can times, because you can go to one another and speak to one another without it being personal, and understanding that you're all moving in the same direction and trying to build your enterprise to where everybody's successful and the business is winning. So this is I wanted to be able to kind of share with you guys some things that I've lived by as a coach, that to me are transcendent, not just coaching basketball, but they transcend into other areas of life, into other areas of business. So, if there's any questions, I'd love to open up the forum for questions or any other comments that you guys have. But this is what has driven me as a coach, and things that I've really lived by to be successful.
Hey, Coach, it's me again.
Yeah.
Coach, specifically in regards to like Toronto, Kyle Lowry, earlier in his career, was considered by some to be hard to coach. He didn't respond well to change. He was always very nervous about change and slow to trust. In your experience, I know that, like, later on when he did win the championship with Toronto, he's considered a lot more coachable, and is now considered the best Raptor, like, of all time. What do you think made the difference for him over time? Was it just maturity? Was it just and with your time with him, like, how was he in terms of like being coached, and what really made the difference for you and him and your relationship?
Man, Kyle Lowry is one of the smartest basketball players I've ever been around. And I think it's a combination of all of those things. I don't think it's one thing. I think the combination of him maturing as a player, for him seizing the opportunity in the NBA, the chance to actually compete for a championship, that window is so small. And the the whole thing about that team in Toronto that year, obviously the Kawhi Leonard trade happened, and that's a very dynamic trade that changes that team. Even though DeMar DeRozan is a phenomenal player, the pieces that came that really thrusted Toronto in a place to be, well, we have a real team that can compete for a championship. LeBron has left the East. And when I got to Toronto, I sat down and talked to Kyle. And I told him flat out, I said, look, man, I've heard all these different things about you, but I don't really care what I've heard. All I want to deal with you on what I see every day. And we had some knockdown dragouts. We had some really bad days. I'm not gonna lie to you. Where Kyle was in this place of, he's like I want to use basketball play. They're like raising kids. They're not kids, but they're like raising kids. And they will get away and they'll push your buttons as coaches to see what they can get away with. And they will push your buttons. And if you let them get away with it, they'll keep pushing your buttons. And so on day one, Kyle was really upset, about the trade and DeMar being traded. And day one, you could feel his energy of just wanting to isolate himself. And I just told him, I said, look, man, you want to win a championship? That's the worst thing you can do. As the leader, as the face of this organization, you're going to have to put your personal feelings to the side and dive into this team and give yourself to this team. And it wasn't easy for him. It was a tough season, but to his credit, all the ups and downs that he went throughout the season, he got to a point in the season, he said, man, I'm just going to put myself to the side and do whatever it takes for us to win. And that's kind of where our team started going in the upward trajectory going into the playoffs. And he allowed himself to sacrifice and remove his personal feelings from the situation and just be the best basketball player he could be.
Hello? Hi there. Yeah, this is Bob. Thanks for joining us today. I notice you've got a lot of stuff about humility, being a servant to the game, and you just got this vibe that's about gratefulness. And I just wonder, how did you come to that as like a key to success, and how do you keep it going?
That's a great question, Bob. I have to give all of the credit to my parents. I was raised in a very old school household. My dad and my mom were from Louisiana. My father was driving a truck at the age of 12 on a farm. So all he knew was work. And so as I was growing up, I'm the youngest of 7 children. I had all my brothers, 5 brothers and 1 sister. My parents, they were just very blue collar. I was blessed enough to be raised by both of my parents. My father was the first minority-owned construction business in Oakland, California. He was the first minority owner, and I saw my father wake up every day. I didn't see him; I was asleep, but I knew my dad woke up every day around 4:30, 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work, and he worked all day, and he would come home and he would be in bed by 5 p.m. And I saw his work ethic. My mom was a homemaker. She took care of our home. She taught us as kids how to be domesticated, how to clean your room, how to sweep the floor. I mean, I really learned all of these things, and she would not let us cut corners. If I would sweep the kitchen floor, my mom, if she saw something on the floor, she would make me go back and sweep it again, do it again. And I remember those things as a kid, the details of just how they were very meticulous with us in terms of teaching us respect, teaching us work ethic. And in the summer times, I used to go to work with my dad. He used to wake me up I used to call it dark o'clock because the sun wasn't up. We'd wake up at all hours of the morning and he would take me to work with him. And I would spend 14 hours at work with him. And I knew as a kid, I hated it, but I saw how hard my father worked. And my parents really just instilled in me, I grew up in an area of, hey, you say yes, sir, no, sir. You look people in the eye when adults are talking, you stop talking. I just grew up in that area of being respectful to people and treating everyone the same. So I think that's really just kind of crossed over into all phases of my life. And, like I said, the game of basketball has just been, it's been a blessing to me. Um, I can't take any of it for granted. My career has been a tremendous blessing, and I try to live in the moment of being grateful and humble for everything that's been brought my way, because just as fast as it's given, it could be taken away. So every day I try to have that sense of gratefulness for what's in front of me, and just appreciation for what my career has been.
Coach, this is Jay. We had an earlier conversation today about having an owner's mindset and really being an owner in your function, but also how to navigate working cross verticals with other owners, right, of their function. So, for
Mhm.
example, those don't always line up. Sometimes there's different of opinions, different ideas, different directions. So, for you, for example, you know your team, you're the coach, right? But maybe the GM might think differently, wants to bring in a different player, or thinks your team needs something differently. How do you navigate those disagreements?
Yeah, I think I always believe that the head coach, and look, management and head coach are really important. And the chemistry, right? Communication. You're not going to always agree, but there has to be a line of communication to where it's okay and it's healthy to have an opinion and not have to have the same opinion. And at the end of the day, the decision makers are the decision makers. So, as a head coach, you might have a strong opinion about a player, and the organization might say, "Hey, we're going to sign this player anyway." It's happened. It happens all the time. So, in that instance, my responsibility as a coach is I still have to coach that athlete, even though I feel that that player is not a great fit for the team. I've voiced my opinion to the ownership and the management, and at that point, now if they make a decision and go in opposite direction, I still have to do my job. My job is to coach the team that's in front of me, and I think that there's times where front office and the coaching staff are aligned and the decisions are made together. And hey, some front office have the philosophy of, hey, you're coaching this team, so we want to give you the players that you feel you need. And then there's other franchises that say, hey, well, this is our organization. Yeah, we know you're the coach, but we really want this athlete. And in those instances, you really, as a coach, you speak your piece and you coach the team. And that's how that element works. And I think in that, using that example, it's one of those things where you still have to do your job. And I think sometimes when you're working in different verticals, that where it may not be someone that has the authority to make decisions, but two different verticals, I think collaboration. I use the word collaboration. How can we collaborate and come to the medium? Because again, you might have different opinions of how things should go, but being able to hear each other out, right? Instead of just saying, no, I don't really want to hear what you have to say because I don't agree, but at least being able to hear one another out, communicate through it, and then how do you arrive at a destination in the middle? Communication is really big. That's the biggest thing I can tell you about those type of things. You have to be able to communicate and communicate freely.
Thanks, Coach. That was awesome. And a lot of the stuff that you shared with us today, I think, aligns with the stuff that we've been talking about throughout the day today. So it's comforting, at least for me, to hear that the lessons you learn working with the basketball greats and the challenges you face are actually very similar to the
Yes.
challenges that we face. I mean, I'm sure all of us have kind of drawn our own conclusions and can think of our own examples that parallel what the coach has shared with us. So thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time.